Hey, if you're seeing any of my videos for the first time, I'm Joseph McKenneth Goodwin. I am a certified spiritual life coach, a published author, and a digital content creator. If you'd like to join my Life Coaching Academy, purchase any of my self-guided digital e-courses, as well as my books, please click the link in the description box below. Otherwise, thank you for being here. Relax, and let's dive a bit deeper into some topics you may or may not be familiar with. This one's about Jesus Christ and one of his most notable stories, the parable or the story of the sower. And before you think I'm about to preach to you, I assure you that if you stick with me to the end, what I have to say about this will change your entire perspective of not only Jesus Christ, but about yourself. Jesus Christ is often mentioned in my published books as a way of providing insight into how we were meant to exist in this human experience. The insights about Jesus Christ I expand upon in my dialogue do not come from the strict dogmatic evangelistic principles found in most organized faith-based systems. Those principles to me have been a catalyst for misinterpreting very practical ways of showing up in our everyday lives. Such an example is found in the parable of the sower. Jesus said, quote, "Listen, a sower came forth, took a handful and cast. Now, some fell upon the path and the birds came and picked them. Others fell upon rock and they did not take root in the soil and did not send up ears. And others fell upon the thorns and they choked the seed and the grubs devoured them. And others fell upon good soil and it sent up good crops and yielded 60 per measure and 120 per measure," end quote, from Matthew, Mark, Luke of the Holy Bible, the King James Version. The human avatar of Jesus Christ was identified as a carpenter, a teacher, a prophet, a healer, and a socio-political savior to the Jewish population, just to name a few. Many felt that he was a man of great intelligence, yet of great mystery. Because of this, Jesus Christ dealt with groups of people who were resistant to how he showed up in the spaces he existed in. Everything he shared was under a microscope, which meant that the clearest thoughts about the welfare of humanity would be distorted by those that felt threatened by him. And instead of inquiring with open hearts and minds, they resisted his insights. They were armed and ready to fight and debate. That was not, nor was it ever, Jesus Christ's intention at all. It is so important to know that we can challenge something without it turning into a debate. Debates aim to prove or disprove something. To challenge something is to simply get clarity on our personal interpretation of whatever that something is. Because Jesus Christ had nothing to prove or disprove, a part of his intention was to neutralize some of the resistance he was faced with in his teachings. In response to the resistance, he presented a lot of insights in the form of parables. They were given to his followers and listeners in a form that they could relate to on the surface, but the deeper meaning related to those with the desire to expand their awareness beyond the surface. Spiritual enlightenment. Hence, we have the preceding parable of the sower. When taking any of the parables of Jesus Christ into consideration, one must raise questions about how the story could relate to our personal character. Therefore, from this parable, we are invited to face the question, what kind of ground am I on? Now, some fell upon the path and the birds came and picked them out. Firstly, the handful before that statement are the sower's seeds. They represented God's unconditional love. The birds represented humanity's condition. The sower, of course, represents Jesus Christ, the physical embodiment of unconditional love. That statement can be compared to when an individual hears anything pertaining to God's unconditional love or any concept of spiritual enlightenment and does not understand or understand it. Then what was heard is often misinterpreted by the human condition, the birds, society's rigid programming. Many may say that people misinterpret God's unconditional love because it does not fit into their conditional agendas. They prefer to fulfill their own personal agendas, even if it harms or diminishes someone else's. However, anyone who sincerely desires it may easily receive God's unconditional love, regardless of conditions, to eventually have a clear understanding of themselves and others. Others fell upon rock and did not take root in the soil and did not send up ears. Using the representation just mentioned, when an individual has heard the message of God's unconditional love, they receive it with loving emotion wholeheartedly. However, when the rough times come, the message becomes pointless. There is cognitive dissonance. This reaction highlights the inner resistance in relation to their personal conditional agendas. Many would assume that these individuals would only be seeking immediate gratification and temporary positive feelings rather than centering themselves in the fullness of God's unconditional love. Because experience is the best teacher here, perhaps after a series of continued resistance, these individuals may surrender. To me, it's quite common for us to desire immediate gratification, but the constant stimulation of that would cause us to diminish or distract ourselves from the challenges of everyday living through life's experiences. And others fell upon the thorns, and they choked the seed. The grubs devoured them. Very self-explanatory. The individuals that received what the sower gave understood it very well. But their selfish cares choked out of them what they received, and they became unfruitful. The striking difference to me between the thorns and the rocks was the time frame element. Those that were a part of the rocks lasted for a short amount of the time. Those that were a part of the thorns were well planted. But as time passed, they lacked the energy to not only receive more, but to expand in their current condition. Everyone in the thorny soil was conditioned to have never given up. That eventually led them to hold on too tightly to outdated, obsolete ways of thinking and existing with the expectation of different results. And others fell upon good soil, and it sent up good groups and yielded 60 per measure and 120 per measure. Also self-explanatory. This represented the handful that fell into the human open heart and mind. They heard it, understood it, and eventually became fruitful beyond any given measure. Overall, this parable has a very nuanced message about how multifaceted and multidimensional we all are. This parable has invited those of us who have an open heart and mind to develop the awareness of the ground we are currently on, not the ground that we desire to be on or the ground that we've previously been on. This means we get the privilege of asking ourselves again, what ground am I on this right now, present moment? It is an invitation to be completely honest with ourselves. Is it the ground that the birds came and picked from? The rocky ground, the thorny ground, or the good ground? There is no right or wrong answer to this. There is, of course, the possibility of being unwilling to acknowledge one's own ground because of a lack of personal accountability and awareness. It is the awareness that we are simultaneously the sower, the handful, the birds, the rocky ground, the thorny ground, and the good ground. If such lack of awareness be the case, very little insight would be gained from this parable. But that's okay. What doesn't register consciously would be stored in the subconscious mind. And again, because experience is the best teacher, whatever insights we are meant to gain consciously will be revealed in what is constantly streaming into our own personal experience. Therefore, the question raised through this part of our dialogue would forever be open because every individual answer would look, feel, and be completely different. Everyone's intentions and expectations are not the same. When we honor and respect the differences in our own personal intentions and expectations, we honor and respect the differences in others. That's how we coexist and expand in harmony. Since we know very little details about the 33 chronological years of Jesus Christ's humanness, perhaps the willingness to question what ground we are on may have been Jesus Christ's overall intention for his personal humanness. In expressing this outwardly, he offered himself as a mirror, not to be confused with the biblical depiction of the crucifixion, for us to apply this same line of questioning to our own human lives. When I was a young boy, my childhood church held annual revival meetings. We were evangelical Christians of the Pentecostal apostolic denomination. Our head pastor was an ordained apostle. My church was his second establishment, and his first establishment was in Florida. His second establishment, my church, was in the state of South Carolina. Some of the members of his first establishment would travel to South Carolina for many of these revivals. Many more would travel for one of the biggest revival meetings. an appreciation service dedicated to the work of the apostle and his wife. This meant the two churches would all gather in my church's building to celebrate. This also meant that many of the visiting members of his first establishment would need a place to stay. And so my mom's intention was to volunteer herself and our house as a host for some of the visiting members. She was so eager and excited. This was her way of being of service to God and our church. This then gave her a reason to buy that new kitchen dining set that she had been wanting for our house. It was a used set, but it looked new. It was a patio style set with golden metal legs, the cushion seats, and a back seat that looked like it was tightly woven with straw from a wheat field. The table was a light brown colored wood and a golden trim around the edges that matched the gold on the metal legs of the chair. She had expectations of having the house set up in a certain way that she thought would make the stay more pleasant for our guests. The guests were very impressed by the way our house was set up for them. However, a series of events occurred in the house that left my mom feeling very disappointed and embarrassed. At the service on one of the revival nights, one of the members took a seat in one of the chairs at the kitchen table, and a big boom reverberated through the house's walls. I was in the back room, and I immediately walked out and looked down the hallway to see that one of my mom's golden metal kitchen chairs had bent after one of the members sat down in it and fell to the dining floor. In a very childish and unhinged fashion, I bursted into loud, obnoxious laughter. Thankfully, they were okay, and I assumed my laughter added to my mom's embarrassment, so I quickly and sincerely apologized to everyone. Then, an air mattress one of them was set to sleep on had a hole in it, and they had to sleep on a pallet on the hard floor instead. Nonetheless, they made the best out of the experience, and even though my mom's expectations for most of everything were not met, they were pretty accepting of it all. Expectation is the centerpiece of our existence. Intention is the motive or the reason that drives the expectation. Expectations are personal. Therefore, they are not certain when projected outwardly. They are only probable. This means things could probably go our way or probably go another way. Expectations are the stories we tell ourselves and the standards that we set in place about what or who is desired and or undesired in the outcomes of any intention. When there's a clear intention, it is important to practice and master the art of being okay, no matter what the expected outcomes are. When the intention is unclear, we tend to get too specific about the expectations, and if things do not go the way that we specifically expect, then it becomes a breeding ground for disappointment or embarrassment. My mom had gotten way too specific in her expectations and started projecting them into the outcomes. She figured if the bedrooms were made in a certain way and the living and the dining rooms looked a certain way, then this would ensure that our home would be a pleasant stay for our guests. Her overall intention, though, was to be a pleasant host for the guest family. Although many things did not go as expected, she remained committed to her intention despite the disappointment and the embarrassment, of the unmet expectations. And because of that, our guests still had a pleasant stay. So much so that they would come back each time to stay in the following years. Not only were they coming back to a new dining set and air mattress, but they eventually were also coming back to a newly built home with extra room and a lot more amenities and conveniences. Expectations and intentions complement each other. Therefore, the best way to manage the probability of our expectations is to get clear with our intentions. Life responds more to our intention and less to what our specific expectations are. But oftentimes when we are not very clear with our intentions, we will only be focused on external expectations and use that as an intention. For example, if we see a specific luxury car, a beautiful or a handsome individual, a specific amount of money that sparks our interest, we begin wanting them. And when there is no clear intention for them, we are wanting them to just simply want them. And when we do not get them right away, we simply say, I'll wait. And then life says, your wish is my command. And then life dishes out similar options of luxury cars, beautiful, handsome individuals, or more of that amount of money that keeps us in a constant state of wanting and waiting. This leaves us constantly feeling disappointed, frustrated, agitated. We feel as though we're being tricked, manipulated, and breadcrumbed, when all it is that we're not in energetic or emotional alignment with our intention. It is the neutral or the easeful motive, reason, or feeling of having the luxury car, the beautiful or handsome individual, or the specific amount of money. And no, the solution is not following some magic potion formula that commands us to play a sound or do a ritual or some abracadabra action step that will snap those desired things into our physical existence automatically. The solution is to clean up our perception, our internal, external word choices, and shift out of lack-based states and wanting into abundant states of having. Every physical thing we experience here was once an unspoken feeling, a want, or a desire. The feeling translated to a thought in the mind before ever becoming a physical thing. For it to become a physical thing, the feeling state, which would be the intention, and the thinking state, which would be the expectation, had to be consistently on the same page. How do we feel when we see or think about that car, or that person, those finances? Instead of saying, I want that car, or I want that person, or I want that amount of money, simply say, I love that car. I love that person. I love this amount of money. I enjoy the way I feel when I think about them. Having them around supports my ease and my happiness. They hyper-focus me on my goals. I get to expand my reach when they're around. I enjoy the horizons I get to explore with them. Feel the difference? Now, just because we are clear with how we feel does not automatically bring the physical evidence of those feelings into our physical experience. We must honor the delays, and the delays honor context and personal levels of perception. We are not the only ones with intentions and expectations here. The people, places, things that are meant to bring that car, that individual, or that money into our physical experience have got to rise up to meet the occasion. And many times they're not readily available the moment we are clear on the feeling. The most important step in managing the delays is to commit to keeping those clear feelings or intentions active by basking in the general joy of having our expectations fulfilled and exceeded in other, sometimes micro, ways that are readily available. It's the art of the process of thinking from, or feeling from, behaving from the state of the fulfilled expectations, meaning the version of us that is living in the joy of our fulfilled expectations. We get to, at any given moment, tap into that joy and ease in ways unrelated to the unfulfilled expectation in the current circumstances. Ways include going out for a walk in nature, journaling, reading some uplifting words, listening to some uplifting music, having an uplifting conversation with a trusted friend, paying it forward at the drive-thru, or simply taking a nap. Here's an affirmation to consider. I love when my expectations are fully met and exceeded. Oftentimes, we do not physically know when, where, or how our expectations will be fulfilled, but when we commit to the intention, the joy, and the ease of existing and living from the state of its fulfillment, then our expectations are fulfilled and exceeded in expected and unexpected ways. Well, I'm going to pause on this stream of thought in this video for now. If you'd like to expand the stream here, please be kind enough to subscribe, comment, like, and share this video with someone you love and care about. In the meantime, in between time, be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself, and make the best of this right now moment and the right now moments to come.